West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
But we begin tonight still awaiting a verdict in the trial of 5 members of the far-right extremist group, the Proud Boys, for their role in the violent attack on the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. All 5, including the group's former leader, Enrique Tarrio, are charged with seditious conspiracy. This is the group that Donald Trump famously told to stand back and stand by during the 2020 campaign. Along with other far-right groups like the Oath Keepers, the Proud Boys descended on the nation's capital, heeding Trump's call for what he promised was going to be a wild time. The jury is expected to continue its deliberations on Monday. And while the Republican Party would like nothing more than to be able to move beyond the insurrection, the party's standard bearer is making that all but impossible, as he continues to make litigating the 2020 election and the big lie the main component of his 2024 campaign. Trump yet again pushed those debunked conspiracy theories last night at a campaign stop in New Hampshire. But probably more problematic for Republican Party leaders is his continued embrace of the January 6th insurrectionists themselves. Last night, he quite literally embraced one of the rioters who spent 160 days in prison for her actions that day. Trump told her to hang in there and that they were going to be okay.
What they say is so sad what they've done to January 6th. So bad. Patriots. I mean, I hear the terrific woman.
It turns out that terrific woman, Mickey Larson Olsen, is a QAnon supporter who told NBC's Vaughn Hilliard last year that she wants members of Congress, as well as former Vice President Mike Pence, to be executed for treason.
Those were domestic terrorists inside our Capitol, and I'm going to prove it on my trial.
Who are the domestic terrorists?
Our Congress that's been stealing elections for a very long time. Our country's been under admiralty law since 1871.
What should the punishment for those members of Congress be?
Execution for being traitors. That's what our Constitution demands. Our Constitution demands that traitors in our nation are executed. And that's what should happen to each and every person that hijacked the voice of we the people.
Is that something that you see actually happening?
Yes.
That's Trump's wonderful woman. And let's not forget that Trump has also claimed that he might pardon those charged in the insurrection if he reclaims the presidency. He even went so far as to record a song with some of the insurrectionists who are still incarcerated awaiting trial. That song is now being used as part of his campaign events. While most Republicans remain silent about Trump's continued adoration for this group, recently ousted Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney tweeted this warning to her former colleagues. Trump is embracing a J6 defendant who called for the execution of members of Congress. To elected Republicans who have endorsed him, you are endorsing his conduct on January 6th and every day since. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Joining me now is Congressman Eric Swalwell of California, a member of the House Judiciary and Homeland Security Committees, and Harry Litman, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General, senior legal affairs columnist for the Los Angeles Times, and host of the Talking Feds podcast. Thank you both for being here. Congressman, I will start with you. Your reaction to Donald Trump literally embracing a QAnon-supporting insurrectionist who wanted people like yourself to be executed.
Joy, these are the foot soldiers of MAGA Nation, and they're doing exactly what Donald Trump, Tucker Carlson, and the MAGA Nation want them to do, which is to carry out violence in their name. And they try and be cute about it by, saying stand back, stand by. But in all of their signaling, they are telegraphing that they want violence because they refuse to condemn the violence. And so, the sedition charge here against the Proud Boys leader is likely, and I'll leave it to the jury, is likely to stick because the aim of the violence they carried out was to try and overthrow the government that was counting the votes. And so, Joy, it's also, as we step back and look at accountability for January 6th, the Department of Justice can play their part, but if the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, is going to continue to meet with January 6th, he met with Ashley Babbitt's family recently, we just learned today, and allow his members to go to the January 6th jail, that's just a green light for more violence to be carried out in the name of MAGA Nation.
Seems so. Harry Litton, let's go to this trial, because I wonder if it surprised you that they have not reached a verdict as yet and that they are going to have to continue deliberating. What does that tell you as a former prosecutor?
I would say not a lot yet. So it's been 2 days after a trial of some 4 months with 5 defendants, 9 different charges. I think any jury that's carefully sifting through the individual charges would have taken about this amount of time at a minimum. The congressman has been a prosecutor, and he might probably concur. 3 days, 4 days, that seems normal. You start to really bite your nails at the 5 or 6 day mark. So I don't think this is anything unusual or surprising so far.
Congressman, it sounds like you were agreeing.
Yeah, again, very rarely would they come back so swiftly, but, that's 45 different counts if you break it out with 5 defendants and 9 charges. And a diligent, responsible jury will give every defendant for each charge, the benefit of the doubt, which is, that the state has to prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt, and that takes time. So not much you can read into here. I would be interested to know what types of questions are coming back from the jury, if any at all. But again, this seems pretty standard.
Harry, let me go back to you on this, because so what we do know is that these are some of the texts that we saw going from Oath Keepers who were connected to other far-right groups, the 3 Percenters and others. So Kelly Meggs, who was the leader of the Florida chapter of the Oath Keepers, which is one of the other main groups, militia, started reaching out to allies and other far-right organizations. The militia had sought to create what prosecutors referred to as an alliance with the Proud Boys and the 3 Percenters. Meggs told a member of the 3 Percenters he had made contact with the Proud Boys and called them a force multiplier. There is video here that you will see that shows Enrique Tarrio, a documentary filmmaker, took this video. This is the garage meeting on January 5th. The video included a portion in which you could hear someone saying, "It's inevitable. It's going to happen. We just have to do it strong and fast." This video includes Stuart Rhodes, Enrique Tarrio, Kelly Sorrell, a lawyer for the Oath Keepers, Bianca Gracia, who's the leader of Latinos for Trump, which also Enrique Tarrio used to be the leader of, Joshua Macias, who helped to run a group called Vets for Trump. We know that Tarrio sent a document saying 1776 returns, and it outlined a January 6th style attack. According to the Department of Justice, the plan was to occupy a few crucial buildings in Washington, D.C. on January 6th, including House and Senate office buildings outside the Capitol, with as many people as possible to show our politicians we're in charge. We know that several Oath Keepers were convicted of seditious conspiracy. Do their convictions tell us anything about this trial, since they were working so closely together?
Well, it's a really interesting and important point, Joy. And there's this amoeba-like quality of these groups. Even the woman that Trump embraced, she's no longer QAnon. She has got a new group. We see this in the international realm as well, where it's very hard for the government to kind of keep up, because a trial is a snapshot of criminality when it happened. The theory here of the government, and seditious conspiracy is always a hard charge to prove, is that what the Proud Boys were and wanted to be was the spear going forward forward because their numbers wouldn't permit the attack on their own. So they did need to combine, including with people who just got caught up in the moment. So yes, that garage video I found really alarming, specifically not just for the charges themselves on January 6th, but for what it portends of the continuing kind of evolution and new emergence of groups in different forms.
Right. And, Congressman, the only group that was called out specifically by Trump, and he was asked to condemn far-right groups and condemn white nationalist groups. The Proud Boys were named. He said, stand back, stand by. We know there was an immediate response. They changed their logo to add stand back and stand by. They responded to him on social media that sort of interaction wasn't direct, but it definitely was. They directly felt he was talking to them. It just, as you look at it, both as a member of Congress and also as a former prosecutor, does that tell you that it will be very difficult to convict Oath Keepers for seditious conspiracy, but not the group that was literally told to stand back and stand by?
Again, Joy, I'll leave it to the jury. This is their job. But it looks like, they may have worn, different colors that day, but they were all essentially on the same team and they had the same charge. But to the larger picture here, I do believe that what the American people are looking at, they're grateful that the Department of Justice continues to aggressively prosecute these cases. But January 6th and who was responsible, I put it in two camps. You had the hustle and you had the muscle. And the muscle are the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, the groups that went in there committed to carrying out violence, and they have been aggressively prosecuted. The country now, though, is asking, when is the hustle going to be responsible? And the hustle is Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, the people who spun up, incited, inspired, and aimed the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers at the Capitol. And I think for complete justice to happen, the hustle and the muscle need to be, completely held accountable.
It is Monday, the 1st of May of 2023, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays. Why? Because it's Monday, and that's what we do after the weekends. All right, just so you know. We've taken what is, left over from the weekends, and we've made it into a gourmet intellectual delight for you here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. That's what we do. Okay, so all sorts of news out there in the world. Foremost in my mind, and I got to tell you, it's been bantered about, and rightfully so, but this xenophobic racist BS that Greg Abbott has to bestow upon the 5 slaughtered people down there in that little Texas town. They're illegals. Like, apparently they am. Anybody who is like brown-skinned is an illegal. We know of at least one of the murdered people, a mom, protecting the babies in the room. One of them, she was a legal resident. Now, I know that a lot of people are upset and said, yeah, well, she wasn't a citizen. Okay, so I guess they deserve to be shot then, and we shouldn't care. This dehumanization on the part of these xenophobic races has got to stop. I'm tired of this BS about grooming. Hell, they're censoring Nora Roberts. That's a whole other level of evil. And I'll tell you why. Moms of Liberty has forced me to defend romance novels, adult romance novels. How dare they? Whew. Oh my God. So that's what we're up against. They even got The Fixer by Bernard Malamud banned. Like they really know what The Fixer is about. Yeah, read it. It's really a good book. Yeah, set in Russia. But he was a Jew, so maybe that's what they don't want anyone to know. This Jewish cabal tried to bring us down. Yeah, that's what it is, Moms for Liberty. But I'll be more pissed because they make me have to defend adult romance novels. That's almost as bad as defending Louis L'Amour, which I'd probably have to do also if they banned him. I would say that, that's a personal decision, not one that you would impose upon a great mass of people. If you don't like Louis L'Amour, keep it to yourself. Well, tell people about it, but I'm not going to go out there and ban Louis L'Amour from the people who, might glean some sort of idea about what the West was. Yeah, well, kind of romantic. Nicely backlit. Louis L'Amour. And adult romance novels, and give me a break. Can't let high schoolers read about any number of things. Hell, what was Nancy Drew! Nancy Drew is getting banned too. Because they're banning books that have any mention about, robbery, corruption, I don't know. Don't want to burden some of the little kids' innocent minds with the realities of my fraud on society. They might recognize it for what it is. And then I'll have to put up with it years later when they come back and they blame me for their inability to cope with life. Oh, God. This is where we are. 5 people get slaughtered by a guy who says, no one's going to tell me what to do with my gun at 11:15 at night. And he goes and slaughters people, but it's okay. They're illegal aliens. Grudgingly puts out $50,000-$60,000 as a reward. Took him 48 hours to come out with a statement, and in the statement he goes, yeah, but they were illegal aliens. All right. Fine, upstanding Christians. That's what they are. Yep. I keep telling everybody that civic duty is not a religion and religion is not a civic duty, so stop it. No one listens to me. Hell, they don't even read the whole thing about the Second Amendment. Where's this well-regulated militia I keep hearing about? It doesn't exist anymore. Such a fanciful, otherworldly concept has no meaning today. Oh, yeah? Well, so much for originalism then, eh? Yeah, we all know what originalism was. An excuse for them to get away with, bestowing upon them the enabling acts. I'll be flogging that dead horsehair sweater for quite a while. Yeah, I have been. It's a problem with comedy. Sometimes the old jokes just keep coming back because they do. All right. What else is going on? Well, there's what we have in store for you here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. We could just get into that. Why don't we? Yeah, it was a weekend, and still grieving over our little ginger dog going into the great beyond, the Rainbow Bridge and all of that. So, made a little memorial for her, and, where she is buried right now, interred. And pretty big flower pot, and we're going to get a little dog angel, I guess, and then grow some flowers in it, and it'll look pretty and be in honor of a great little companion, a member of the family, truly. So, okay, what do we have in store for you here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy on this River City Hash Mondays? Well, Republican National Committee Chair Ronna McDaniel urged losing GOP candidates to double down on taking away women's rights. Wow, she's such a friend. Metrosexual Josh Hawley blamed Hunter Biden for America's manliness crisis. I'm not taking advice from Josh Hawley on what manliness is, please. And Cristal Spain is the first black woman to lead the South Carolina Democratic Party. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where after a series of killings, anti-corruption groups urged South African authorities to provide far better protection for whistleblowers. And a powerhouse U.S. doctor who was slain in Sudan was killed for nothing. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. Across from that chat room link to the left, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, is the link to our Patreon page, and do please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. It really does help us pay these bills and all the other sundry costs that occur just about this time each month. Yeah. So thank you for your generosity in allowing us to fulfill our civic duty as the founders originally intended so many years ago. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, Mastodon, and Spoutable, you can do so by going to @Netroots Radio at those sites. Tom takes care of those, and thanks, Tom. Follow me on Twitter, Mastodon, and Spoutable at Justice Putnam. I incidentally post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's 10 minutes before showtime. And you can find that by going to those social media feeds, and the links are there. So you can find all those diaries over the course of time. You can also follow the show on Twitter, such as it is, at Cookbook West. And please do pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever fine podcasts can be found, mixed in with all the rest of us. Because we are there, and so are they. Okay, this first offering in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is by David Edwards, out of Raw Story. Republican National Committee Chair Ronna McDaniel urged Republicans to face women's reproductive rights head-on after her party's war on abortion was blamed for poor performance in the midterm elections. McDaniel addressed the midterm losses yesterday, Sunday, in an interview with Fox News host Shannon Bream. What I will say is the biggest takeaway we're taking is independents did not break our way, which has to happen if we're going to win in 2024, which usually that's what causes that red wave, she revealed. And abortion was a big issue in key states like Michigan and Pennsylvania. And so the guidance we're going to give to our candidates is you have to address this head on, she added. The Democrats spent $360 million on this, and many of our candidates across the board refuse to talk about it, thinking, we could just talk about the economy and ignore this big issue, and they can't. Bream noted that many Republican candidates fail to talk about abortion in a way that attracts voters. Yeah, they're uncomfortable, but they can't be, McDaniel replied. And it's not just talk about it once. The Democrats are putting $360 million against you on TV in lies. So those lies become truth if you don't fight back. So you just need to say, listen, I'm proud to be pro-life. David Edwards out of Raw Story brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. Senator Josh Hawley, Repug of Missouri, agreed with Fox News host Rachel Campos Duffy that Hunter Biden contributed to a crisis of manliness in the United States. There is no doubt that we have a crisis of purpose for men, especially young men in this country, and we just need to call these men to something higher, Hawley told Fox News on Sunday. But it comes down to an individual father taking responsibility for his family and his child, whether they're out of wedlock or not, Campus Duffy opined. And it's really shocking that right now, this very moment, we have the first son, Hunter Biden, shirking his responsibilities as a father to little Navy Biden. And we have grandparents in the White House who haven't stepped up at least to step in for him at that, she added, and Hawley agreed. You make a great point about the need for dads everywhere, whether it's the first son, I guess, as a title may be to any other son, any other man in America, the senator remarked. If you've got kids, you need to provide for them. Wow, is water wet? Is it? Meg Kinnard of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Cristal Spain, a longtime party operative, was elected on Saturday as chair of South Carolina's Democratic Party, becoming the first black woman to lead the organization in what will be the Democrats' lead-off presidential voting state in 2024. Spain was elected during the party's convention on Saturday in Columbia. She takes over in a wave of changes across state Democratic parties for 2024. With her election, and thanks to the party's recent revamp of its primary schedule, 4 of the 5 states in which Democrats will vote first next year, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, and South Carolina, now have black women chairing their state parties. Putting states with more diversity at the top of the voting calendar was a priority for President Joe Biden, who recently moved on his own re-election bid and pushed to move South Carolina, a state where he won big in 2020, to the top of the nominating calendar. Calling her victory a historic moment for our party and for women, Spain pledged to implement year-round voting engagement and mobilization efforts in hopes of garnering more statewide wins for the party as the nation's attention hones in on South Carolina for the 2024 cycle. I know from all the experience, all of the volunteering, all of the jobs I've held, the importance of this role, who is setting the stage, who is implementing the strategy so that we can win, Spain told reporters after. Black women are major drivers of the Democratic electorate, particularly in South Carolina. Spain takes over from Trav Robertson, who has led the party since 2017 and announced earlier this year he would not seek another term. Spain had backing from a slew of party leaders, including Representative Jim Clyburn, for whom Spain previously worked doing constituency service and outreach in his district office. She was also endorsed by former party leaders such as Robertson and Jamie Harrison, who preceded Robertson as state chair and currently leads the Democratic National Committee. In a statement, Harrison said Spain has the experience, judgment, and strategic vision to get South Carolina Democrats back on the winning track, and I know she will be an excellent chair. Spain held off efforts by two other candidates, both of whom withdrew after early voting showed massive support for Spain. Brandon Upson, a progressive Democrat who chairs the state party's Black Caucus and advised Tom Steyer's 2020 presidential campaign in South Carolina, said he was pulling out for the sake of unity in the party as it prepares for 2024. Catherine Fleming Bruce, an author who unsuccessfully sought Democrats' 2022 nomination against Republican Senator Tim Scott, also launched a bid. Spain, age 46, has years of experience in South Carolina's political spheres, working as political director for Bernie Sanders' 2016 presidential campaign, and serving as Senator Cory Booker's state director for his 2020 White House bid. Well, that kind of balances out then. And for 2 years, she worked for Clyburn's district office, focusing on constituent service and outreach. She also founded 46 Hope Road, a political action committee aimed at energizing voters who had been inactive since Barack Obama's 2008 presidential campaign, and worked on black voter engagement for the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee for the 2022 midterms. While the national prominence of South Carolina's Democratic Party has risen, most recently when the DNC made South Carolina the first voting state on its 2024 presidential primary calendar, South Carolina Democrats have struggled to notch electoral wins at many levels of office. Winless in statewide elections since 2006, Democrats hold only one of the state's 7 House seats. The party last won a Senate race in 1998, and Jimmy Carter was the last Democrat to carry the state in a presidential election. Well, that brings us to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, Disaster Mover. Back in 2011, an earthquake and tsunami killed over 19,000 people when it devastated Japan's Tohoku region. Moved, writer-director Makoto Shinkai has said, there's this divide between those who experienced the disaster firsthand and everyone else. Such disasters have been the backdrop of Shinkai's work until now, but his most recent animated film, Suzume, brings them very much to the forefront. Suzume is a 17-year-old high school junior who lost her single-parenting mom in the Tohoku disaster and has lived with her aunt ever since. One day, Suzume meets a young man named Sauta and learns that a great destructive worm lives confined beneath Japan, and that earthquakes are its attempts to escape, and devastating ones are when the worm succeeds. Due to a curse and a wayward god, Suzume joins Sauta to close portals in abandoned, forgotten disaster ruins and keep the worm from coming through. Critics, and even Shinkai himself, are calling Suzume a coming-of-age story, but I don't see it, and strangely, I don't miss it. Suzume doesn't have to learn or overcome anything. At movie start, she is who she needs to be. She sees a threat that others don't and takes action. Literally. The film celebrates her physical exertion. Suzume doesn't fight, but she runs, she vaults fences, bikes up mountains, is up for a 20K run, and though all that helps, her quest is more fueled by the generosity she finds from strangers. In fact, the film shows, ironically, how much harder it is to manage connections with people you know than forge them with those whom you don't. As much as Suzume is a love letter to Japan, complete with a cross-country chase and gorgeously rendered vistas, I found much in it to move non-Japanese me with my concerns about the global climate apocalypse, specifically the need to acknowledge current and past disasters while looking at how we must act to avert or at least survive the cataclysms to come. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
Don't you wish your life came with a warning app?
Stop. That dog does not want to be petted.
A heads up before something bad happens.
You should not send that text.
Uh-oh. Life doesn't always give you time to change the outcome, but prediabetes does. With early diagnosis and a few healthy changes, you can reverse prediabetes and prevent or delay type 2 diabetes. To learn your risk, take the 1-minute test today at doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its prediabetes awareness partners.
Earlier this year, I kept hearing that one of California's most unusual natural wonders was sitting right outside San Diego. But when I pulled my car off the road next to a metal fence behind a landfill and a recycling center, I started to have some doubts. Hey, Chuck.
Yes.
How's it going?
Good, Chris. The entrance to the landfill is not the most impressive entrance to a national natural monument, but it protects it a little bit.
This is Scientific American's Science Quickly. I'm Christopher Intagliata. I've always been obsessed with visiting the more extreme corners of my home state, California. And back before Google Maps and Instagram made it so easy to see what stuff looked like before you get there, I'd just stare at this big paper AAA map of the state, find some place that looked interesting, and drive there in my old Honda Accord. Those trips took me to places like the floor of a pitch-black lava tube near the Oregon border, so dark inside I couldn't see 2 inches in front of my face, and all the way up to the crest of the White Mountains, wandering the bristlecone pines. But here was a place just a little over an hour from where I grew up that I'd never even heard of, the Miramar Mounds National Natural Landmark. And in a state full of superlatives, the lowest basin and the highest peak in the lower 48, the tallest waterfall in North America, the largest trees in the world, this place protects one of the tiniest wonders. It's way less iconic, for sure, but it's much more special to see, and it's almost on the verge of disappearing. A wildlife biologist named Chuck Black had offered to show me around. He's a caretaker of sorts here, so I hop into his truck, we drive down a muddy road. It's pretty flooded in places, too.
Oh, wow, we're driving through water.
Yeah. It's fairly deep, but it's as long as you stay on the gravel part, you're okay.
It rained a lot here in California this winter. It's the wettest winter I can remember in a long time. And all that rain's been a really good thing for what I came to see, vernal pools. Vernal pools are a type of seasonal wetland. They're these dried up muddy spots that when the water hits them, they just transform into shallow little ponds exploding with life. Chuck hops out of the truck and leads me to an overlook for a better view. It's a rolling, marshy landscape dotted with scrubby bushes and shrubs.
Vernal pools occur on these mesa tops, which were once at the bottom of an ocean. And when this was a level ocean floor, the shells of clams and crustaceans and things settled down over the millennia and formed a cemented layer, which is called a hard pan layer.
It's kind of like the bottom of a swimming pool.
And so if you dig down a couple of feet, you'd swear it was cement that somebody had put out at some time. And that's why the vernal pools exist.
Right now you can see these pools everywhere. And at first glance, they're not all that much to look at. But if you zoom in a little closer, you'll see an abundance of life. Dozens of little invertebrates and plants, and they've all adapted to take advantage of the opportunity these pools provide. Chuck stoops down next to one, our boots sinking into the mud, and he drags a little green aquarium net through the water. On the first pass, he pulls up one of the most iconic residents of these pools, the fairy shrimp.
So there we go. You see the fairy shrimp. Those are really nice large ones.
Oh, yeah. And they have two tiny little beady eyes? Is it?
Yes, two little beady eyes.
If you remember raising sea monkeys as a kid, these fairy shrimp are related. They're tiny, delicate little crustaceans. And if vernal pools had a mascot, it would probably be these fairy shrimp. In fact, since this natural landmark is on land owned by the Marines, officially it is Marine Corps Air Station Miramar, the fairy shrimp actually have become somewhat of a mascot here. They actually make these little patches with them on it.
We have a fighting fairy shrimp medallion that people really laugh at. It's a fairy shrimp holding a machine gun. And every year, soon after the fairy shrimp show up, I take an aquarium full of shrimp into the commanding officer's headquarters.
I'll add that because Chuck is the resident wildlife biologist on this base, probably fits within his job description to drop an aquarium full of berry shrimp at the commanding officer's desk.
It's always fun to get that reaction when you take a aquarium full of shrimp in and people see them for the first time.
I mean, they're quite delightful to watch swim.
Yeah.
He takes me farther down the muddy trail to look at a smaller pool.
See, here are some deer tracks. Deer came along and got stuck in the mud.
Crouches down, grabs a little sprig of something.
So this is San Diego mesa mint. If you pinch that and smell it,
oh wow!
Yeah, it smells just like a mint.
Yeah.
So that's San Diego mesa mint, and this one is San Diego button celery. That's Orangium ristulatum.
Both of those plants are endangered species, and several of the fairy shrimp species that live here are endangered too. They're endangered because a lot of their habitat has been paved over or turned into supermarkets and farmland. Statewide, it's estimated 90% of the pools that once existed have been destroyed. And maybe that's why I'd never even heard of this place or heard of vernal pools at all. Most of them are gone, but the ones that are left harbor a disproportionate number of California's native species compared to the surrounding areas.
So there's brachiopods, ostracods, copepods, cladocerans, and besides the crustaceans, there's a lot more.
Truly, a lot more.
There's worms, lots of kinds of insects. If you want to get small, there's rotifers and other kinds of, and protozoans. There's bacteria, there's algae, vascular plants. It's minestrone.
In the next episode, we'll talk with biologist Marie Simovich and other scientists about the suite of different plants and animals beyond fairy shrimp that call these pools home, and the one thing that unites a lot of them, a gift for living on the edge. Science Quickly is produced by Jeff Delvicio, Tulika Bose, and Kelso Harper. Music by Dominic Smith. Don't forget to subscribe to Science Quickly wherever you get your podcasts. Head over to scientificamerican.com for in-depth science news. For Science Quickly, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
Wake up and text. Text and eat. Text and catch the bus. Text and miss your stop. Wait. Text and be late to work.
Sorry, I'm late.
Text and work. Text and pretend to work. Text and act surprised when someone calls you out for not working.
Who, me?
Text and meet up with a friend you haven't seen in forever.
Hi. Oh, hey.
Text and complain that they're on their phone the whole time. Text and listen to them complain that you're on your phone the whole time. Text and whatever. But when you get behind the wheel, give your phone to a passenger. Put it in the glove box. Just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
If you love them enough to turn off your music and pretend like their music is your music,
this is Mommy's jam.
then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the right seat to make sure they're in the right car seat.
Let's play it again.
Check today at nhtsa.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Ready for our little forest adventure?
Yes!
So much waiting for me. Yeah, I wanna go outside. I wanna be.
We're here.
Whoa, that was fast.
There's a forest closer than you think. Find a park or forest near you and music inspired by nature at discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by USDA Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
When public officials get themselves mired in the muck of corruption, they can always count on Senator Ted Cruz to issue a moral judgment. If the offender is a Democrat, he pronounces the corruption inexcusably grotesque. If it's a Republican, he wails that the offender is the victim. For example, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas was recently caught, yet again, butt deep in judicial immorality, taking hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of freebies from a Texas real estate baron who has both a partisan and corporate interest in Thomas's court rulings. So, Cruz to the rescue! No judicial impropriety here, he squawks, for this is nothing but a diabolical plot by Democrats to smear poor Clarence. But Thomas is busy smearing himself, so Dems can just take the advice of Woodrow Wilson. Never attempt to murder a man who's committing suicide. From the start of his court tenure, Thomas has been a shameless seeker of personal gain, tucking untold sums from untold sources in the inner pockets of his judicial robes. He learned to hide his corruption in 2004 when he actually reported taking pricey gifts from a special interest, which got him widely condemned. So he reformed. No, he didn't quit taking gimmies, he just quit disclosing them. Thomas is a supreme grifter, but sadly he's not alone. Many recent justices have fallen from the pedestal of judicial integrity, cozying up to the moneyed interests. Gifts aside, we now have a hyper-partisan right-wing Republican majority taking their judicial opinions from those same interests, turning America's unelected third branch of government into an autocratic, plutocratic political agency. Then they wonder why their public approval rating and legitimacy are in the ditch. This is Jim Hightower saying, since they won't reform themselves, we must do it for them. To help, go to fixthecourt.com. Howdy-ho, folks, and thanks for tuning in to my Hightower Radio commentaries. And guess what? There's even more Hightower waiting for you online. Subscribers to my Substack newsletter, Jim Hightower's Lowdown, get commentaries, articles, interviews with progressive sparklies, live events, historical nuggets, and more. Go to jimhightower.substack.com to sign up, and you'll get more. That's jimhightower.substack.com.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1886. That was the day that workers throughout the United States walked off their jobs in a coordinated, planned effort and demanded the 8-hour day. What made this strike truly revolutionary was that the workers were not asking for reduced pay for reduced hours. They wanted their pay level to stay the same. Chicago labor activist Alan Parsons explained this that March for the Chicago Daily News, saying, quote, "The movement to reduce the work hours is intended by its projectors to give a peaceful solution to the difficulties between capitalists and laborers. I have always held that there were two ways to settle this trouble, either by peaceable means or violent methods. Reduced hours, or 8 hours, is the peace offering. Fewer hours mean more pay. Reduced hours is only the measure of economic reform which consults the interests of the laborers as producers, which can only be acquired by possessing and consuming a larger share of their own project. This would diminish the profits of the exploiters." That first day of May, tens of thousands took to the streets in Chicago, and an estimated 300,000 protested across the nation, marching for the 8-hour day. The strike met with early success, but then 3 days later, an unknown person threw a bomb at a workers' rally in Chicago's Haymarket Square. The government crackdown against the 8-hour movement was quick and harsh. 8 men stood trial in Chicago for the bombing. 4 were martyred despite a lack of evidence tying them to the bomb. come. But the idea of the 8-hour day was not so easily crushed. It spread not only in the United States, but across the world. Now, more than a century later, May Day, this day, is the International Workers' Holiday. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. We always begin, whether from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 49 degrees Fahrenheit under cloudy conditions, much cooler than what we had over the weekend, which was in the 80s. And looks like we will only get to be about 55 today, which isn't so bad, with considerable cloudiness throughout the day and an occasional rain shower. Winds will be light and variable, and it looks like we'll have, measurable rain when it comes, then cloudy this evening with showers after midnight. Lows in the upper 40s to low 50s, winds light and variable. It looks like we'll have something less than a quarter inch of rain, and then showers in the morning, then partly cloudy in the afternoon with highs in the mid to upper 60s. Winds light and variable, and it looks like we're going to get a quarter inch of rain tomorrow. Grass pollen is considered moderate here in our little town of Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is good at 35 parts per million, but oh my, that daytime UV index is high at level 7. And that is very high, so it's not very high, it's high. But it's almost very high, and take precautions, slather on the SPF whatever. No matter how many clouds are in the sky, it can burn you anyway. Barometric pressure is falling at 29.85 inches. Visibility is up to 9 miles, and relative humidity is at 83%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 62 degrees and mostly cloudy on a mostly coronation. Paris is 60 degrees and mostly cloudy. Rome is 66 with rain. Kyiv is 60 degrees and sunny. Kabul is 57 and mostly cloudy. Hong Kong is 75 and fair. Tokyo is 57 degrees and partly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 54 degrees and clear. San Francisco, California is 52 degrees and cloudy with a small craft advisory on the bay because of fog. And New York is 58 degrees Fahrenheit, partly cloudy with a small craft advisory as well. So that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Mogomotsi Magome of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. An accountant working on a high-profile corruption case was killed along with his son by unknown gunmen while traveling on one of South Africa's main highways. A government health department employee who warned of illegal dealings worth $50 million was shot 12 times in the driveway of her home. The slayings and other cases have anti-corruption groups urging South African authorities to provide far better protection for whistleblowers. They also have fueled outrage over widespread graft linked to government contracts, which has plagued Africa's most developed economy for years. The global initiative against transnational organized crime counted a total of 1,971 assassination cases in South Africa between 2000 and 2021, with whistleblowers accounting for many of the targeted individuals. The specialist accountant and liquidator, 57-year-old Clotie Murray, was working on the financial accounts of a company that was heavily implicated in bribing government ministers and others to win huge contracts. The company, previously known as Bosasa and now named African Global Holdings, was one of the most prominent subjects of the Zondo Commission, a judicial inquiry into government and other high-level corruption during the 2008-2019 presidency of Jacob Zuma, who was on trial on separate corruption allegations. South African anti-corruption organization Corruption Watch said the killings was further evidence that the country faced a crisis in terms of the rule of law. Levels of public confidence in our law enforcement capabilities, not to mention the political will to hold criminals and the corrupt accountable, have dropped to an all-time low, Corruption Watch Executive Director Karam Singh said. As the most recent example, the brazen murder of Cloete Murray and his son sends a chilling and intimidating message to anyone seeking to end impunity for corruption and crime. This must represent a turning of the tide for our country.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Ellen Nickmeyer of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bound to Sudan by ailing parents and his devotion to treating the poor there, American doctor Bushara Suleiman kept working as long as he could after fighting in Gulf Sudan's capital. For days after battles between two rival Sudanese commanders erupted in Khartoum on April 15th, the 49-year-old Suleiman treated the city's wounded. He and other doctors ventured out as explosions shook the walls of homes where Khartoum's people cowered inside. Gunfire between the two factions battling for control resounded in the streets. The morning that Suleiman decided he had to risk the dangerous escape from Sudan's capital with his parents, American wife, and his two American children was the morning that the war found Suleiman, friends say. And the wholesale looting that has accompanied fighting in the capital, Khartoum, a city of 5 million, a roving band of strangers surrounded him in his yard Tuesday, stabbing him to death in front of his family. Friends suspect robbery was the motive. He became one of two Americans confirmed killed in Sudan in the fighting, both dual nationals. Authorities say the other, with ties to Denver, was caught in a crossfire. They have not released that American's name. Mohammed Isa, a Sudanese doctor who practices in the Pittsburgh area, was a close colleague of Suleiman. Over the years, sometimes I asked him, Bushra, why are you doing there? What are you doing in Sudan? He always said to me, listen, yes, I love living in the United States, but the United States healthcare system is very strong, and one doctor more or less won't make a difference. Aissa said Suleiman would tell him, in Sudan, everything I do has so much impact on so many lives, so many students, and so many medical professionals. The sudden illness and death of Aissa's father in Khartoum meant Issa was in Sudan when the fighting broke out, now trying to get back to his American wife and children in the U.S. He spoke late last week from Port Sudan, a city on the Red Sea, now crowded with Sudanese and foreigners who made the dangerous 500-mile drive from the capital in hopes of securing spots on ships leaving Sudan. He described a journey through checkpoints manned by armed men, past bodies lying on the streets, and past vehicles carrying out families killed attempting the escape route. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we will meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.